Hello there, Chrisora here, and welcome to the Ultima review. Now, if you're just here because you wanted a 36-minute video reviewing just the Ultima weapon, I do apologize. No, this is called the Ultima review for two reasons. One, not only will I be reviewing the first Kingdom Hearts game, I'm going to review and compare every official adaptation, the novel, the manga, and I've gone back and played not just the 1.5 remix, but the original March 28, 2002 Japanese release. Let's compare them all, how they tell the story, what differences there are, and while this video we're only covering KH1, I plan to do this with the rest of the series, so do please subscribe for more of that. Oh, and reason number 2 this is the Ultima review? No other content creators seem to have called their series that. I mean, come on, it's a free title for the taking. Right, anyway, let's just jump, or dive, right into it. So, interestingly enough, we're already at difference number 1 for the OG Kingdom Hearts. There's actually no difficulty options. This was added for the international release, and then Beginner was added for Final Mix. Some other additions for the HD remixes released a decade later include an ability to stop earning EXP, the music has all been redone and remastered, and the title screen was changed for Final Mix, and that carries over to the remixes. Well, the game starts with this amazing, visually beautiful and foreshadowing opening with the Planet B remix of Hikari or Simple and Clean. Side note, this is actually my first time seeing the Japanese version of the intro, which was interesting because while I've heard Hikari in the full 5-minute Planet B remix, I just never seen the intro with it. Now, the books and the novels don't have that. They don't come with an MP3 of Simple and Clean, nor do they print out the lyrics for you to sit and go, does that mean you have to meet my father? What are we talking about here? Did I miss a couple of stories before this? I mean, yes you did, but those haven't released yet. So anyway, dive to the heart, the big opener, and where is it? In both the manga and the novel, the dive to the heart only lasts a page. I mean, kind of. In the novel, we at least get the station dialogue, but out of any kind of context, and it makes zero sense. While the manga, we get a picture of the station on the cover, and then a similar image later with Kairi, and then we get the meteor shower on Destiny Islands with Kairi's grandma's story, and then a flashback of Kairi appearing on Destiny Islands. I mean, we do get the reference to it in the dialogue on Destiny Islands in both adaptations, but that's pretty much it. So, let's talk about the games. The Station of Awakening and Dive to the Heart sequence is such a good opener. It really sets this mysterious tone and lets you discover darkness and the heartless in the most organic way, finishing with the dark side fight. Now, as I said, the music has been updated in the remixes, and while the original gives me some nostalgia, the remixes just sound so much better. And as for the controls, well, they updated that too, giving more reaction commands, whereas in the OG that was relegated to the bottom slot of the command menu, while summons were in magic, which was kind of a mess. The new layout, it's just so much more intuitive and comfortable. Darkside boss is such a great ender. I've liked Kingdom Hearts for a long time, 15 years since last Christmas, and I just have a lot of fond memories of playing. I remember discovering the tech points you get for hitting the head of Darkseid after seeing Sora do it in the recoded cinematics. I was playing on the PS3 version of 1.5 when I figured it out, and while the platforming in this can be a pain, it's something that you kind of get used to over time, and as you play the game more and more, it's something that just becomes easier and more intuitive. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about Dive to the Heart. Now, here we are, Destiny Islands, and I gotta say, there is something really nostalgic about this world, and I really do hope we get it back as playable again someday. So in the manga, we get this great shot of bug-eyed Sora through the first cutscene, and things basically play out the same in each adaptation. In Kanemaki's adaptation, we get backstory about them sword fighting, and even though it's not necessary, I really like it. It's nice to know how Waka taught them, and it incorporates the fights with them really well, seeing Waka versus Tidus, and then watching Sora versus Riku, then getting insight into Sora's thoughts and insecurities revolving around Riku. A specific line I really liked was, "Must be nice being Riku." This is really nice to see, especially knowing the confession he makes to Riku at the end of KH2. We'll get to that, but yeah, that's a real benefit of the novel over the other two adaptations. Sora is really fleshed out, and it's fun seeing the side quests from the game in this way, like finding the raft supplies, for example. It also references Sora's dad when he's thinking about leaving. He thinks about how nice Destiny Islands is and the residents. There were the beautiful sandy beaches. There were birds on the hills, and even mushrooms to eat. And Riku and Kairi, Tidus and Selphie and Waka, Mom and Dad, and the other people in town. all the wonderful friends he had fun with here on Destiny Islands. This really fleshes out Sora's ideals that stick with him on his journey. The manga really rushes through Destiny Islands and omits the Sora don't ever change scene. And while the art is nice, it's clear Amano hasn't quite gotten his style, and is playing things very safe. As for the games, there's not really much to say other than the fetch quest used to annoy the heck out of me as a kid. My first KH game was 2, so I was used to the more straightforward nature of things. And while I'm older now, it's not necessarily difficult, it still seems like a bit of busy work, but fighting the Final Fantasy characters is fun though. And every time I replay, I have to do it, which is honestly part of why I could never even attempt to speedrun these games. I'll say the other reason later. The scenes with Ansem and about Mickey's letter are pretty straightforward in each adaptation. However, structurally, the novel and manga both merge the first 2 days of Destiny Islands together, have the Donald and Goofy scenes, and then we get the destruction of the islands. And although I won't really go into it, there's scenes like naming the Highwind in the novel, or the scene of Kairi making the good luck charm, though that's at a different point in both adaptations. The destruction of the islands is essentially the same in all versions, although in the Japanese version, it's interesting to know that Sora's dinner was in fact rice. And we've determined that because of Duolingo. This video is not sponsored by Duolingo, I mean, unless you want to, Duolingo. In the novel, what I like is Sora tries to hit the shadows with the wooden sword and then gives up fighting when it doesn't work, which is something you do as someone first playing that part in the game. It's nice to see how these elements of gameplay are translated into the book. The dark side in the manga is this big epic fight, while in the novel, it's just a desperate moment of Sora's heart resonating with the Keyblade and him taking charge of his destiny before getting swept to. Traverse Town opens the same with Donald and Goofy, and then Pluto waking Sora. However, from this point things start to change a little. In the novel, Sora talks to the Moogle in the first district, and he gives this whole exposition about Traverse Town before Sora meets Sid. In the manga, Sora gets hit on by a questionable lady who then turns into a Heartless, gets saved by Sid with a flamethrower. Yeah, okay. In the manga, the pacing of Traverse Town is so strange. It completely omits the scenes with Donald, Goofy, and Aerith, so they explain that after Guard Armor is defeated, and no Aerith to be seen yet. The novel instead plays a beat for beat almost. Although, one moment I liked was Sora looked closer at the girl in front of him. Her hair did look like Kairi's, except it wasn't the same color, and her face was different too. So she looked like Kairi, except completely different? Then Sora, Donald, and Goofy get into their gummy ship and fly out to the ocean between. The manga nicely incorporates the scene of Riku waking up in Hollow Bastion here. So here's where all adaptations differ completely. The novel covers every world except Olympus Coliseum, Atlantica, Halloween Town, and 100 Acre Wood, but we'll get to that. The manga then goes in a weird order. After Traverse Town, there's Wonderland. Then you get Traverse Town Part 2, then Agrabah, then Olympus Coliseum, then Monstro, then Atlantica, and then we're back on track with Neverland. It also has 100 Acre Wood as a bonus chapter, but that was also in the little book that came with 2 final mix. Oh yeah, and if you're keeping track of that world list, between adaptations, that means yes! Both the novel and the manga skipped out on Halloween Town. It's time to sound the alarms! So let's start with Wonderland. In the game, unless you really know what to do, it's a bit of a pain. It's kind of a problem with the first game. When I first played KH1, especially since, like I said, 2 was my first, there just wasn't too many hints to what to do. Now, some of that was me being a stupid kid, but also, there really is so many points where if you didn't read through every text box or run around in the right specific order, we'll get to it, you're kind of, as we say in Ireland, well, As I've gotten older though, and learning to explore properly, I do appreciate this world a little bit more. I like how when you find all the evidence you get Blizzard early, and the different perspectives and ways into the Bazaar Room has grown on me. Also, that other reason I can't speedrun? I just need every treasure chest. Whenever I play, it's a problem. So let's see how the novel does. Again, it closely follows the game and how a player would approach certain tasks. One inclusion I liked was them eating at the Mad Hatter's table. However, there's some great dialogue to break up some fight scenes early into the world. We have some nice foreshadowing to the events in Hollow Bastion.
Gosh, these things...
Okay. I'm using UberDuck for these voices. I know it sounds ridiculous, but let's just keep doing it.
Gosh, these things are following us everywhere.
Goofy took a breath, and readied his shield. He still didn't like fighting the Heartless, but now that he was getting used to fighting alongside two others, they didn't scare him so much anymore. Said Donald, attacking with his magic.
Guys, I'm sorry.
Sora told them sadly, even as he finished off a Heartless.
Oh, don't feel bad, Sora,
said Goofy.
He served the king and he sent us to find the key, so we're sticking with you. There's nothing for you to be sorry for.
Sora's face fell.
But, so if the king hadn't sent them, these two wouldn't be going anywhere with me at all.
It was a terribly lonely thought. They'd only been together for a little while, but they were fun to be around. Hot-tempered Donald and easygoing Goofy. Of course, they didn't compare to Kairi and Riku. Then during the Trickmaster fight, the novel kind of treats it as a puzzle for the trio to solve. So firstly, Donald uses fire and lights up Trickmaster's batons, which he does at the stove during the actual boss fight. Trickmaster throws them and Donald's hat gets lit on fire. Because of this, Sora figures out that water will help, which leads to Donald running and using the faucet in the Bazaar Room on himself. Sora and Goofy also connect during it too.
If we don't beat it, we won't find the waste nor the king or your friends either.
This then led Sora into reflecting how, if Goofy is fighting for Alice and his friends, then he must help Donald and Goofy fight for the king.
We're not just fighting only for ourselves.
Donald uses Blizzard to weaken it, and since fire didn't work while it staggered, Sora used the table to whack it in the face and finish it off. In the manga, Wonderland is just so charming. I really like the art style and it goes by at a nice pace. There's also one really great addition, and I mean the novel kind of has a line hinting towards it, but the manga is far more overt. Right before Jafar's, "But the boy is a problem," it's revealed that actually, Cheshire Cat was approached to be a part of the League of Villains, but he turned them down, I guess because it would be more in character for his allegiance to truly be with no one. And, okay, let's briefly mention this here, but I know some people will be like, "Yeah, I guess that's interesting, but it's not canon. Mr. Nomura didn't write it. If he didn't write it, it doesn't count. Why are you bringing it up? Only Nomura can say what's canon and what's not, and this isn't canon, so shut up! I don't care." Yes, the games and what Nomura has written are, at the end of the day, the be-all and end-all of canon. But, just for a moment consider this. If it doesn't contradict the game, what's the issue? It's a fun little idea that also kind of explains why he knows so much about the Heartless and what's happened to Alice, since he does seem to know a bit extra about the world border. And also consider this. I'm not saying we accept every change from the novels and manga as canon, but just consider them fun little fill-ins or alternatives. And we'll definitely have more to talk about in future games. For those who haven't read, wait until you find out about what happens to Vexen or even Demyx in KH2. Anyway, we're here to judge how it tells the story. So yeah, shut up. And now that that rant is out of the way, let's hope the next world is fun and enjoyable and no bits. Waste your time on what you don't believe in. To the tree house and then the camp. Backtracking, it never ends. Please end my suffering. In my opinion, Deep Jungle is the worst world in the first Kingdom Hearts game. I know, it's the popular thing to hate Monstro and Atlantica, but at least in those worlds, there isn't so much endless running from one end of the map to the other, and then back, and there, and 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 back, and... But what's even worse is the funnest part of this world is only unlocked after you beat it. And because I had no desire to revisit this world for years apart from Synthesis, I only found out about it through trying to get the trophies. Oh, and you get cures, so great. The novel is a big improvement. Not going too deep into it, there's just some nice character moments, and it's far more straightforward than the game's telling of the story. I quite enjoyed it. That's it. A nice short and sweet world. Olympus has probably overstayed its welcome in later games, but I always still seem to enjoy it. As far as the game goes, the storyline is fun. The extra cups are great ways to burn through gaining EXP, especially with the bosses at the end of each round. It's got some of the most iconic super bosses in it.
Well, happy holidays.
And even oddly enough, Samwise plays Hercules for some reason? Did they just want another big name for the cast list or something? And probably the coolest introduction of a Final Fantasy character in any of these games. Look, I love Final Fantasy VII, and I know this was the start of Cloud's My Chemical Romance phase that would go on for the next while, but I like it enough. The design is ridiculous, but the perfect level of edgy. A mix of Cloud and Vincent, which Nomura said was because this time, in this setting, Cloud is leaning towards the dark side, and I wanted to make him a bit more demon-like. And since Vincent was exactly that kind of design, I just added it in. Although I would have liked to put Vincent in the game too. He also in the same interview clarified Cloud is from Hollow Bastion, which I mean we knew that, but it's still interesting to think about what this character's history is in the KH universe. I'd love to see it more expanded.
Not interested. But I am interested.
I'm guessing in this it's because he lost Zack. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that in another video, but the only thing left to ask is, why did he bandage the Buster Sword? What purpose did that serve?
Use brings about wear, tear, and rust.
In the manga, he really looks good in the art style. There isn't really many additions. Again, this happens later in the story after Agrabah. There's the Herc action figure from the movie. It is just a nice, funny couple of chapters with some cool art. There is one major thing worth mentioning though. You see, the manga had two different printings. Tokyo Pop did the original release of KH1, KH2 volumes 1 and 2. Then they didn't do any more. Years later, Yen Press bought the rights and is now up to date. But well, for what was already released, they repackaged 1 as final mix in 2 volumes instead of 4, and changed up the translation to not be as game accurate as Tokyo Pop, but also they printed things way darker then for some reason, so these colored pages are just a mess, and not present in other printings I've heard. So at different points now in each adaptation, we head back to Traverse Town. In the game, it's fine, I like the Gizmo Shop puzzle, and opening up 3rd District, and the way to Merlin's house. In the novel, it's pretty standard. I love how they give the Winnie the Pooh book to Merlin, and Goofy asks,
What kind of book is it?
"Well, I'm not even sure myself. If you want to find out, you ought to read it,"
We will next time.
said Sora, and they left the house. There is no next time. We also get some foreshadowing to the 2 keys of light and darkness, and the ending of the game. There's not much time left. I can't go back. But the light is there above the darkness, and the darkness is beside the light. Merlin and the fairy godmother told them as if reciting a poem.
That doesn't make any sense.
Donald stamped his feet. Darkness is lying in wait for you. But that there is darkness, there is also light.
Darkness and light?
Sora mumbled.
I don't get it.
Donald complained. Merlin pointed to the Keyblade. "Stay with the key, and the path will become clear." In the manga, the scene of Leon talking about the Hearts of Worlds has so much atmosphere. I really like it. We finally get introduced to Aerith, who's kind of weird in this version, and we see cute child versions of the Final Fantasy characters in a brief flashback of them leaving Hollow Bastion. Also, I'm going to mention it here, but there's little joke chapters in the manga, which is really cute, little comics, and Aerith is in a lot of them. Right now, it's also worth mentioning that in the manga and the novel, they actually both have scenes that take place in the gummy ship between the worlds, which is actually very reminiscent of KH3's scenes. More so even than KH2's little dialogue boxes were. Look, the gummy ship in the game, there's not really much I can say about it beyond what anyone else has. The building always frustrated me when I'd press the wrong button or something, but getting the trophies in 1.5 was actually decently fun on PS4. On PS3, however, the load times were absolutely hell. And that's my review of the PS3 copies. So, Agrabah is next, and Aladdin has always been one of my favorite Disney movies. So even the flaws in this world, I kind of have a soft spot for. There's a lot of platforming, but it never gets too annoying. I mean, until you get to the Cave of Wonders and then feel the need to fight everything and then fall into the caverns a bunch, but still the little puzzle is nice, and so are all the bosses. There's not really much to say about either adaptation either. In the manga, the art is really nice. I've always loved how the movie looks, and Amano captured that perfectly. There's also a bonus chapter which covers some of the flashback of Sora and Riku in the secret place as kids. Again, weird placement, but we do see a slight expansion on Riku meeting Maleficent and lamenting on not trying the Paw-Poo. After Agrabah, we actually see Riku in his bedroom, which would go on to make an appearance in Reach Into Memories, a good example of why we shouldn't just dismiss these adaptations outright. The novel is very much the same as the game, although there is some nice inner dialogue of Sora after Jasmine has disappeared.
Someone important to him disappeared.
Sora thought.
I want to find Kairi too. Aladdin feels the same way.
Now the only other thing of note to talk about here is both Amano and Kanamaki both tackle Genie coming with the crew differently, and I think Amano does it better. Genie just gives his lamp, says you can use it to call me whenever. Sora thanks him. In the novel, it's a bit weirder. After Genie offers to help,
But won't this be meddling?
Goofy whispered to Donald. Meddling? Why, nothing's impossible for the one, the only, genie formerly of the lamp! Watch this. The genie shrank into a puff of blue smoke and swirled under Donald's hat.
What?
Okay, Donald. Donald lifted up his hat and the miniature genie's top half poked out. Put me along, your magic will get a turbo boost. Limited time offer. You don't want to miss out on this deal.
Is that okay?
Donald rubbed his hat uncertainly,
Isn't it?
said Sora. And then it ends with Sora promising to find Jasmine, so like, what? Genie just stays silent the rest of the trip? It makes no sense. Speaking of things that make no sense, so to back it up just a little bit, the novel and manga both have separate scenes of the characters reading Ansem's reports in the gummy ship. The manga does it after Atlantica, and the novel splits it up a bit throughout the story. But I have to say, it's integrated really well in both. I think the novel edges the manga out a lot just because there's a bit more in regards to the reactions, and it also contains the final mix reports about Kairi and the foreshadowing of nobodies. It's also really nice that both Amano and Kanamaki knew how significant the reports were and decided to integrate them naturally into the actual plot. So, Monstro itself. Look, I'm with everyone when they complain. It's a bit of a maze, there's a lot of places to fall, although I think once you know where you're going, it's not as painful. It's not a world I dread like Deep Jungle. The plot is interesting and kind of significant, although it's weird that if you play it later on in the story, there's still an alternate version without Riku. It's kind of just weird to me as well, how like Deep Jungle you need to do for the story to progress. It's not skippable, but Monstro is. So in the manga and novel it flows really well. I don't have much to say about either, except it's like Deep Jungle where the plot is just more enjoyable. I feel like this is where Amano is starting to get more comfortable with the characters. The jokes are starting to hit a lot more and it's just really nice. Also the transition from Monstro to Atlantica is pretty great. Monstro sneezes out the gummy ship, straight into it. Boy, oh boy, this world. I love the movie it's based on. Yeah, no, the controls are terrible. The riding the dolphin took me forever to figure out my first playthrough, and the first phase of Ursula is just painful. Maybe I'm doing a lot wrong during it, but it's probably my least favorite fight in the whole game. It teased a lot with Triton as well, knowing about the Keyblade, but we've never really gotten a follow-up to that. I guess because his status in the world, maybe that's why he knows, but it's not great. So this is another manga exclusive. And I actually don't really have anything to say. It's pretty much just the game cutscenes. The scene with Donald giving them their forms for the world is nice. They get handed the Ansem report and it's funny enough, and yeah, that's all. So like I said earlier, not anything besides the game. I think it's one of my favorite of the Disney worlds, probably second favorite after Olympus. The costumes are iconic, the bosses are fun, the aesthetic is perfect. I guess since this is a game only world, it's worth mentioning that this is one of the places where the Heartless have a different color palette and final mix. For the most part, I like the original coloring, but here it's one of those rare times where I think I prefer the final mix. The Search Ghost with the pumpkin color just fits better to me, but for Guard Armor and Trickmaster, I still prefer the originals. Also, they fixed the bug with the Red Trinity, as if you didn't get it after a certain point, you couldn't finish the journal. Also, speaking of Ultima Weapon, this is where the final mix exclusive Heartless appear for synthesis materials, and making it for the trophy was painful, but worth it. And that's all I have to say on the Ultima Weapon in the Ultima review. I like Neverland in the games, it's got probably one of my favorite Sora lines.
Now I have nothing to fear.
You're stupid!
The story really starts taking a focus with Sora, Riku, and Kairi. The bosses and flying are fun enough, so how did the novel and manga do? The novel again is very much a straight off adaptation from the game, nothing really interesting to add, but in the manga, it tries to do the joke of Sora falling on Donald and Goofy, but it swaps the shots and kind of butchers the joke. However, the world redeemed itself comedically from where Sora is about to jump into the Croc's mouth. There's two fourth wall breaking moments with Smee and Donald. The Donald one in particular reminds me of the old Disney shorts. Also in terms of Neverland's ending, it does the pirate ship flying off and even Peter Pan's outfit more like the movie. It's quite excellent. As in the game, they have to get the Navigami installed. In the novel, they read some Ansem reports and have a whole discussion about it before going to Traverse Town, like in the game. In the manga, they have a Skype call with Sid. He tells Chip and Dale to install it, and then we see Sid decide to get his own preparations ready. The Kairi's grandma flashback scene doesn't happen, but Donald and Goofy still comfort him all the same. The novel is pretty much beat for beat, except it happens in Sid's shop rather than outside of it. I love this version of Hollow Bastion. There's so many puzzles and places to explore. It really is a treat, even when you don't have the Keyblade and need Beast to attack for you. Speaking of, the scene where they ditch Sora is drawn, and in terms of shot composition, it's beautiful. Major props to Amano. You also get a bit of an extra scene of Donald and Goofy with Riku. In the novel, we get some more of Sora's inner dialogue.
I don't know what to do. Donald and Goofy went with Riku. I thought they were my friends.
In the game, you really feel the Keyblade's absence more than Donald and Goofy, but as the novel and manga have had far more extra little scenes of the trio interacting, you do feel their absence that extra bit more. The My Friends Are My Power scene is also drawn beautifully in the manga. In the novel, we get a character call in between some of Sora's dialogue, going through different people he's met, from Tidus, Selphie, and Waka, the other Final Fantasy and Disney characters. It even weirdly specifically mentions the nameless flowers in the Lotus Forest and Kerchak. Kind of odd Sora would consider him a friend, let alone significant enough to pop into his mind during this scene. After this fight, we get some nice inner dialogue from Riku, and there's no AI voice for Riku, so I'll just do it myself. We were always rivals, and I always won. Even if I lost, it would only be dumb luck. Except when it was about that. About Kairi. Maybe I'm really no match for him after all. The manga skips the Maleficent bosses and just has Ansem Riku take her out. The novel, however, keeps in the fights and even has the classic
Meteors of heaven, unleash thy fury!
On the novel, the Kairi's inside me scene, I mean, it's pretty standard, some nice inner thoughts. The manga, however, does change things. Sora doesn't say Kairi's inside me out loud and instead thinks it. Also, he doesn't really fight Ansem Riku. Lucky. Instead, he gives Sora the Keyblade of people's hearts, and the art is absolutely beautiful. Also, probably worth noting here, but in Final Mix, before the remixes, they added cutscene skipping, which I'm sure many were thankful for here. If you know, you know. I will say though, Yen Press have done the art of Ansem so dirty with the printing. There's just so much detail that's lost. I know the man loves darkness, but come on! The novel plays the rest off pretty standard. The manga adds a joke about how Kairi recognizes Heartless Sora. In the novel, like the game, they have to go back to Traverse Town, but the novel adds an extra nice little scene of Sora and Kairi in the Gummy ship looking out at the ocean between. During the interaction with the Final Fantasy cast, Aerith reads Ansem's reports to them, including the ones about meeting the king. The scene with the good luck charm is pretty standard, although it says Sora closed his fingers over the charm, which, yeah, I suppose that isn't inaccurate to how he crushes it in the game. This happens after the behemoth fight in the manga, but it's really well done. And look, I'm not going to say anything either way, but there is a debatable kiss that happens here from one of the shots with the way Kairi has her leg raised. I'm not going to say anything in terms of shipping. I mean, we can have Sora and Kerchak because of the novel, but people will see what they want to see, and if you prefer Sora and Kairi, well then I guess you'll enjoy this moment, and if not, like I said, it's debatable, it's not in any other version, and it's not even referenced again. In the novel, on the way to Hollow Bastion, there's a call with Chip and Dale and Queen Minnie encouraging them. It's really nice, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy invite each other to their home worlds. The conversation with the princesses is so much more natural here. In the game, it really does feel like optional text boxes, which, I mean, it is, but it's nice to see it incorporated properly. Speaking of, in the manga they don't actually leave Hollow Bastion. Beast sees Ansem disappear, and it's him who the princesses give this whole speech to about holding back darkness. It's great though. Sora walks in like a badass, and to me it reminds me of, like, you know, the first Pokemon movie where Ash comes through the dust? Similar energy. Sid and the Final Fantasy characters are the ones who take out the behemoth via flamethrower. Back to the novel, at this point and after the behemoth fight, Kanemaki tries to properly incorporate the unknown boss fight into the story. After they seal the keyhole, they get transported to that scene. In the manga, this is a bonus chapter at the end, since this crucial boss was added for Final Mix, and look, the cutscene is pretty iconic, and well, before I continue, here it is, actually voiced by Paul St. Peter, Xemnas' actor. This isn't an AI voice, he actually did it for an interview I did for a radio show years ago.
Who are you?
Ah, it seems you are special too.
And Sam?
That name rings familiar. You remind me of him.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means you are not whole. You are incomplete. Allow me. To test your strength. impressive. This will be enjoyable.
What are you talking about?
It is beyond your comprehension for now. Until we meet again.
Wait, what are you?
I am. But a mere shell.
Bone-chilling, Mr. Matthews.
In the novel, they meet the Final Fantasy cast, pretty much the same as the game, except they read more Ansem reports. Sora realizes he's talking about Kairi. Also, the Riku final mix scene is the same in every adaptation, just at slightly different placements. So, then they're on their way because it's the end of the world. In the game, 100 Acre Wood is fine. As a bonus little minigame world, I can't really complain, apart from this jumping one, and Pooh on the Swing. In the manga, it's just a nice little fun Winnie the Pooh story, and I can't complain. So yeah, back to possibly one of the best final worlds. I love how straightforward it is, the aesthetic of everything, and the fact you visit all the previous locations. The cool new area in Hollow Bastion with the machine that just recently became important, the Chernobog boss, and while the final room is absolute torture at a low level, it's still so intense and I love it. The manga is pretty faithful to everything you would encounter up until that extra room in Hollow Bastion, but even still, it's pretty good. The novel describes the journey as being plunged deeper and deeper into darkness, and it has this great inner dialogue, about to be butchered by an AI text-to-speech voice. Enjoy.
We have to believe if we're going to beat Ansem.
Sora thought.
But I know it because we believe. Peter Pan showed me that if I believe, I can fly. Aladdin showed me that I've got to keep my promises, no matter how hard it is. And Tarzan showed me that I'm with friends I can really believe in. Everyone's taught me so much. Our hearts are connected, so I'm going to give it back. No matter what, I'll come back.
It's pretty faithful. We get a nice scene of them turning on the weird machine, and they hear a voice recite all of the dialogue, and it's described as being like a poem. That's where in the novel they get the last Ansem report. They read it out and ponder on the meaning of it and what Kingdom Hearts is. Both the novel and the manga skip Chernobog and go straight to the final door. Kanamaki adds a moment here for the characters to reflect while eating cookies from Aerith. They remember the tea party in Wonderland and the bananas in Deep Jungle. Amano adds a flashback when they end up on Destiny Islands, which is a nice touch. Both skip the first two phases and the Darkseid callback fight and go straight to the final boss, which I do think is a shame. The Darkseid boss in particular still would have worked since it was still present on Destiny Islands. Seeing Sora know how to take it out even though it's stronger might have been nice. The art is so good, it cannot be stated enough. Look at Ansem's ship, even though it doesn't even factor into the plot here. The novel does fully describe moments from the boss fight, which I love, like going into the portals to save Donald and Goofy. In every version, the ending is beautiful. The game is perfectly cinematic, although there is one line from Kairi, not present in the English release, that we actually might have heard in this trailer.
Don't forget, I have you in my thoughts.
Simple and Clean and Hikari are beautiful, of course. In the manga, Amanu's art style beautifully captures everything. The novel is also just really satisfying to read. Although it does contain an extra line after Kairi's added to the drawing, she reiterates that she knows Sora will come back. I guess for emphasis, but still kind of pointless. The epilogue is straightforward in every version. The only thing to say is in the novel Sora stops chasing Pluto and turns around because he hears the voice in the sky? That's kind of weird. The manga also does have another side, another story as an end stinger. And that's everything covered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a metric of if you didn't know Kingdom Hearts had to only have one version to be introduced to, what would it be? What would be the best experience and give you kind of everything that you need? And it's probably not going to surprise anyone with this, but it's the game. The game is the best version. If we're talking about different versions of the games, I really did only go back and play the 2002 Japanese release just to see how it feels and see if I noticed anything different in it. But the remixes, obviously. There's too much quality of life updates. The remixes are the best versions of the games. And I'm not just saying the game because it's the only one with Halloween Town. It's just really fun. Even though it can have a bit of jank and be confusing the first time, it's just a nicer experience. The novel is probably second, even though I have some issues with that moment with Jeannie and even that moment at the end. But my biggest issue with it is it's nearly too faithful. That while I was reading it, I was like, I could just be playing this. Although a lot of the inner dialogue and extra scenes are actually fantastic and they add so much to the world and to the characters themselves. The manga. So it's interesting to see Amano find his feet in terms of the comedy and drawing the original characters, but also seeing him perfectly draw the Disney characters and worlds closer to their movie counterparts. They really did get the perfect guy for this. The problem is, it's way too condensed, especially at the start. You don't really get to know Riku and Kairi like in the other versions, and they're central to this story working. However, this is only Kingdom Hearts the first, and I can assure you there's definitely ones coming up where I don't think the game is going to be the strongest adaptation. But that's for another day, another video. I'm Chrysora, thanks for watching, and happy 20th Kingdom Hearts anniversary if you watch this when it comes out during March Caprice, and thank you to everyone for organizing that, because that's awesome, and yeah, goodbye.